look clean. I can read this already off the rip. Okay, I'll get to this in a second. Chat off the daily, but it should be pretty good. Okay. I'll get to this in a second. Let me just start off with the monthly time frame first. Okay, so starting off the monthly time frame. Obviously, you know, you had a Sunday opening, which is wild. You came up, created a high at 2147, and then you started to flip bearish now. Now, if you take a look at current price, it looks like you are in this area here. This area of interest is, again, this is your, I guess you can say, resistance that's been formed, because, or not been formed completely, but it's shown that that could possibly be the resistance going forward, just because of the way you rejected this area to the left hand side here. Again, there's no confirmation of that just yet for another 22 days. If you close bearish in 22 days, that's your confirmed resistance. But as of right now, it's just kind of like the next potential possible area that the resistance could be at. All right, so there's a huge difference there. But what you do have though for sure is you do have your support formed here, and that support is going to be formed right here at, like, what is this, 20 or 1990.607. So that's the ranges you're in, right? You're in the ranges of 1990 till 2037 on the monthly time frame. Obviously, that's a pretty massive range, right? And if you're assuming that the monthly has printed resistance there, you can anticipate price to drive down towards the next support for the monthly, which then will take you down towards 1991. Again, this is the monthly time frame today, all right? So again, if you're in buys today, don't worry. This has nothing to do with the monthly analysis, okay? Just because I'm saying the monthly is bearish doesn't mean your buys will not play out today. If you're fucking 200-300 pips in profit, good, okay? But don't worry, do not stress. This is the monthly time frame, all right? So overall, structure overall, in terms of the yearly, we're obviously bullish. Everyone knows that. But in terms of the current monthly, right? In terms of this candle exactly, it shows that we're bearish. It's a bearish candle, right? You create a high, you flip bearish, which means that anything can happen now. You could continue to pop down for the rest of the range, with this being your resistance. Again, there's no confirmation of resistance formed yet, so that's why I'm kind of like, okay, well, let's drop down to the small tab and see what happens. But this is what I would anticipate to happen the month. We would come down towards 1980 and then, or 1990, tap that, and I don't know what happens afterwards. But yeah, that's the next destination that I have on the monthly time frame. So that's the monthly. Drop it down to the weekly. Weekly looks like it is currently coming down as well. Obviously, it's the same monthly and weekly are the same thing, because it is the first day of the monthly, or first week of the monthly. But you have a day left until the Friday close, and if you look left here real quick, you have a resistance sitting on price here at, I believe, this area of interest. So it's this area to the left here. You have this resistance being formed right here, which means that any given point, price could close back into the range. And if it does close back into the range, guess what happens? You'll come down to fill the bottom of the range, which then looking left would take you down towards these areas to the left hand side. I'll say right around here is what you're looking at next. Again, this lines up pretty perfectly, I'll assume, with the monthly time frame. This is like the next support you have here. I based it off of basically just this to the left here, off of these rejections. So that's the bottom of the range. You could come down further, could come down towards, like, again, these areas to the left here as well. But I'll say this is your next destination due to this being a minor level. So we gotta worry about this first before we get to worry about this afterwards, right? But yeah, one day until the weekly closes. If the weekly does end up closing back to the range on Friday, then you should be able to come down to fill the range. If not, and you close respect and support, then again, that's an analysis that we'll do for another week. But as of right now, since we still got a day left, we can still anticipate what could happen with the weekly until we actually close tomorrow and confirm how it happens and how it forms. Cool. So that's the weekly. Dropping down to the daily today. I believe the daily is when things get very interesting and things look pretty clean here, I'll say, for the most part. I know it's NFP week tomorrow, or NFP day tomorrow, which I believe tomorrow should move a lot better, but overall you still got ranges here and you still got leftover volume from Sunday's opening, which means that you should be able to move today as well. Now, if you look at price here, right, and this is why I got so excited about the daily, because overall you want to pay attention to this to the left here, or this structure right now. This is what's most important right now to you, right? Because this is the range that this is the structure that we're currently in. This is the cycle we're in. Obviously, this doesn't really matter what happens here, right? But this is what you're looking at. And if you take a close look, a couple things, you can look at it from different perspectives. The one perspective that I'll say you can look at it from is the most recent resistance, which is right here, and you have a support down here, right? If you pay close attention, or you know what, let me draw it down a little below here. and then here. If you pay close attention, you're gonna notice that we actually close back into the range here. So there's this resistance being marked up right around here, I'll say, and then there's this support being marked up down here, right? This is the range we're breaking back into. This is the range we're breaking back. I gotta get this perfect. This is the range we're breaking back into, right? Basically from 2037, 2040-ish levels down towards 2005. That's the range you're in. And yesterday, I mentioned to you guys how you finally broke out the range here, which we broke out, I think, on Monday, right? And then Tuesday closed below. And then Wednesday, I was assuming that Wednesday's candle would continue to drive down to fill the rest of the range, but I guess not. I guess it just range for the day. But now, with that being said, you have an actual day closure, and it does look like you close bullish, respecting the resistance with the range you got to drive down still. Again, if price were to be in a position to drive up towards the next area of interest, right, I would believe that what price would need to do is it would need to break the lows first before making its way up. So you're in a situation where, like, okay, if you think about price from the opposite direction, what needs to happen if you were to reverse and drive up? Because overall, the daily bias is bearish right now, right? Like the weekly current daily bias, the last 4 or 5 counts are bearish, right? Which means that the current structure is bearish. So you have to think about it from the opposite end. Like if price were to drive up, how would price be able to drive up? Right? It's not that I'm saying like price will drive up, right? We're not saying it's going to drive up completely here. We're saying like if in some universe price were to drive up, how would that be formed? Right? That's what you're asking yourself. Because if you can assume that before price drives up, it needs to grab liquidity at certain levels here, and the daily bias is still bearish for you today, can you just take sales down, assuming that that bottom wick will be the bottom wick for us to drive up worst case? Or if it plays out in our favor, it will drive completely through the ranges with the daily bias. So you're in a win-win situation in that case, right? So in this case, it's like, okay, how often do you see price drive up like this? Very rarely, right? You have like couple things here, no bottom wick here. 2, you close back into this range here. So you're in this play area of 90 or 20, what is this? 2040 down towards 2010, right? So you have to read your opponent's hand. If your opponent were to play a hand here, how would that be played out? Likely what's gonna happen is you will print a bottom wick before making a move up. If anything, this is what I would assume would happen today, right? We'll come down to fill the bottom of the range. Now, in terms of rejecting, I don't know if we're gonna reject, right? But I'm saying like if you were to reject, it wouldn't be here. It will be at least down here at 2010, which means that you have range coming down towards 2010 to take sells down towards today. Because again, worst thing that can happen today is you reverse, but before reversing, you'll be able to print a bottom wick to the left here, which would break these lows and fill the ranges. So with that being said, you have range to come down now, right? So can we look for positions to come down to fill the bottom of the range? Of course we can, but we gotta drop down to a smaller time frame. We have to understand that yes, the overall monthly, weekly bias is bearish, right? Those time frames are bearish right now. But the daily, it shows that, well, technically we are bullish there with the daily closure, but the daily shows that we are currently creating a top wick, which means that, okay, how steep is the top going to be? And that's going to be the hardest part of today's analysis, figuring out how steep this candle is going to break, or how steep this candle is going to be before it pulls back, or if it even pulls back, for all I know, right? But what I do know is that this is a bullish closure, and so at any given point, you could just easily fill the wick and break the highs, and at any given point after breaking the highs, you could flip bearish, right? So understand that, keep that in mind. It doesn't have to flip right now, right here. It's a COMEX opener right now, so there will be volume coming in, but you do have news in 10 minutes here, which will affect the way price looks. So our trades will likely be after 8:30 at around 8:35, 8:40. But yeah, that's the daily. All right, so that's what the day shows. So it's just about figuring out how steep the bottom wick is and where our entry could be if this were to be a top wick for us to drop down. That's what we're trying to figure out. Now let's drop down to the 4. The 4 is in this range right now. There's this resistance to the left hand side right around here, right? And then there's this support right around here. This is the range you are currently in. So again, same thing with the daily. I would assume the previous 4 accounts have no bottom wicks. I would assume that if you were to be in a position to drive down today, you'd be able to drive down after a bottom wick is formed. So someone like this would be ideal, right? I would assume so. It should be able to tap at least a minimum of, if not 1910, not 2020 first, right? So you got range coming down towards 2020. You have like a 140 pip range coming down towards 2020 from where we are sitting right now. Now it's just about how steep it's going to be, right? So it might not even be here. You might just see news come out, news do something like this, because the 1 hour candle is still open here. And wait, let me drop to the 1 hour real quick. Or sorry, not the 1 hour, the 4 hour candle. The 4 hour candle is still open here. and it looks like the 4-hour candle closed bullish, respecting resistance, which means that you're at an indecision level. Price hasn't closed above yet to confirm it's going to drive up, and price hasn't closed bearish yet to confirm that's going to reject to drive down, which means that at any given point you could rip up during news and still close back into the range bearish or back into the range doji, because the 4-hour candle closes in 37 minutes and there's news in 7 minutes. Make sense? So this could happen. All we're doing right now is we're drawing up potential scenarios that could play out. That's all that we're doing here. All the possibilities, just so that we're aware of what could happen, so that when it does happen, we won't be tripping out. We'll know exactly what's forming. We'll know exactly how we're going to attack, and we'll know exactly what we're going to wait for, right? But any given point, understand this could happen with a 4. News can come out, break the highs, break the lows. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how news comes out. Doesn't matter how numbers come out. We're going to adapt to the way price moves after 835, 840, right? So that's the 4. Understand that. Drop it down to the 1 hour. I wanted to see how the 1 hour looks. It looks like the 1 hour candle close at 8 a.m. was a bullish closure with some decent bottom wicks as well. I think in terms of the 1 hour ranges, it's a bit different. I have my resistance marked up, like I'll say right around here on price. So we are still below the ranges. Even if you mark it up here, obviously we're still below the ranges as well. Yeah, if that's my resistance, again, these levels don't really matter right now on like the 1 hour and such, because it's not levels where we're taking buys above or sells below anyways. It's more of just levels to identify a range. So you can use that to however you want to use it as. Draw it where you want to draw it to what makes the most sense to you. But I'm going to put it just here for now, to be honest, from 2037, and my support is going to be at 2020. And the reason why I have it there is because I'm looking left. I guess I'm going to put it at the most recent. And I'm also looking left to see where support is. I'm assuming it's going to be off of these areas of interest here to the left. So I'll go with 2020 as my support. So again, not too important, these levels. It's just to show you that we're in that range. And that's a range we could be stuck in for quite some time today before we start to move. Again, there is news in 5 minutes. So let's see what happens then. But I'm assuming with the 1 hour candle, the daily, right? Going back to the daily real quick, this might be confusing, but the daily bias was bearish, right? We wanted to see if we can grab a top wick to drive down, because that would be liquidity up to drive down, right? Now, before you go up to drive down, there could also be a case where you grab liquidity down to drive up, because the daily top wick could be anywhere. And if you break the daily highs, then you're going to assume it's going to tap in 2044. Again, 2044 is quite far away. It's going to be sitting at around these areas to the left. So I'm assuming that if that were to happen and you don't grab liquidity at the news candle, and the first thing price does at 8:30 is just pops up, great. Because you know what can happen? We can have a sell stop on the breakout lows, assuming that that is going to be a top wick for us to rip back down to fill the bottom of the range. Now, if you do end up breaking our lows first at 8:30 and you push up for news, then that might be the move for the day, because then that's the bottom wick that could play out for the rest of the daily. All right. So as long as you don't break the lows during the news, to be honest, like as long as you don't break below 2028 or 2027, this should still be valid to take sells off of. But again, 4 minutes here, let's see what happens, and then we'll hop on whatever the market gives us. It could be buys, it could be sells, who knows? We're open to both positions today, both areas, because we are in this range, and I don't think we're gonna break out until tomorrow, to be honest. All right, y'all, that's the analysis. Pretty straightforward analysis today. Again, the daily is just going to be the carry of the analysis. It's just like the daily shows you everything, basically, is what I'm trying to say today. That's the time frame that I'm focused on the most. All right. But yeah, I'm going to leave my levels here for now. These levels don't really matter. After news comes out, we'll remark up our wick entry areas. But I'm assuming if you get a top wick on price, it should be in the area of this to the left, to be honest. Let me see. Yeah, it should be like right around here. Right here at 2040.405, which could be interesting. All right, so let's see what happens here. Let's see what news comes out with. Let's see what news polls there. But we can't do much until